そいつの注意を引きつけておいてください。
わかった。
イメージしろ。バルザードはアイアンゴーレムを突き刺す。アイアンゴーレムは破裂する。
All right, my friends, today we had episode 5 of Exploration Hero, and I think this was another good episode of the show. Now, there was a little bit of annoyances kind of towards the end of the show when it came to our main character, and I think Katsuragi is her name or whatever. But I'm gonna talk about that in a second. This episode really kind of showed off our MC going down to the 7th level of the dungeon and participating in his first competition. And he did so with a few different girls. He did so with a team of girls who I thought were going to be a lot more powerful, but they ended up actually being around his level, around like around level 15, I think it was 18, 16, and 15, I think were their levels. And he's at, or maybe like 18, 17, 16. And he's at 16, so he was right about the same level as them. So he went in and participated in this dungeon with a girl named Miku, a girl named Hikari, and then there was another one in there as well too, which I don't quite remember what her name was. I think it started with an L or something like that. But anyways, there was these 3 girls that went in there, and we came to find out that they were actually pretty privileged girls, which is, I mean, hey, can't be jealous of that. Essentially, there's magical bags that exist, and they're able to take them down into the dungeons. And these magical bags, based on what our main character, based on what he told us, based on what Kaito said, was that these bags are about as much as like a small apartment. So you have to assume that these bags are probably about 100 grand or so, maybe a little bit more, but they're quite expensive, and their parents, father or parents had bought these bags for them. So they're pretty privileged kids. And eventually, they do really well in the dungeon. And they end up, passing, or, they end up doing a pretty good job in the competition. And they get these really cool little charms and stuff like that. And by the end of their journey together, they end up inviting Kaito into their party, into their group. He's hesitant at saying yes because he has to go check in with Sil. He has to go check in with Lucy. And I'll talk about that in a second. Now, before I move on to his conversation with those two, there were a few different questions that I had last week and just all weeks. But, there's a few questions I had with differentiation between outer world and inner world, inside the dungeon, out of the dungeon. It doesn't make sense, like, if you were to increase your strength by 10 and be able to move a boulder in the dungeon, it wouldn't make much sense if you weren't able to do that out of the dungeon. But that's what the show wants us to believe. Now, I still don't know quite the complexities behind that. Like, if you were to increase your strength, does that not transition to outside of the dungeon? It seems that obviously the muscle and the strength that he's building, like physically, it seems that does translate out of the dungeon. So I'm still going to get caught up in the weeds with that. But some of the things that it did clear up for me was, how is it that they're when they're in the dungeon, they're able to get like this VR type, like if they had like a headset on, they're able to see kind of like statistics and monster info and stuff like that. Now, the show answered this for me without necessarily specifically answering it for me. As he was in the locker room, he was getting changed, Kaito was, and he put on a contact, and the contact is able, like AR, like when you have like AR, or like, I think this was called AR glasses, that semi-reality type deal. That is what it is. They put on a contact, and through the contact lens, he's able to see that information. So it's like, oh, checkbox. That makes sense on, why monsters and all that stuff like is able to be presented to them. The other piece of it is, what was the other question that was answered for me? Let me think. There was another thing that it specifically answered. Oh, when it came to Sil and Lucy, and why he hasn't been caught yet. Because originally he did the Sylphie summon, and he made sure that the summon was done, out of the eyes of the camera. But since then, you have to imagine that there's cameras everywhere, that, it must have been caught on camera, Well, I think it was one of the new girls. I think it was Miku. I think she's the one with the kitty with the cat summon. I think it was Miku who said, "Oh yeah, summons." She registered her summon with the guild, so everybody knows about it. But summons are not seen by the cameras, so it to the outer world or the people watching live streams and stuff. They can't actually see your summon. They see the power, or they see the like if they do a firebolt, they're able to see that, but they're not able to see the physical summon. So I thought that was a really cool thing and a really good benefit and boon for Kaito is like if he decides to show off his summons to other people in his party and stuff, they'll be able to see them. But to the naked eye, they simply won't. And I was like, that's really cool stuff. So those are the two main things that it answered for me. I don't know if he's gonna end up registering them with the guild or not. But again, that's an interesting thing. Last thing I'll say is, with some of the questions I have is obviously when he summons Syl and when he summons Lucy, he's able to interact with them physically. So they come out as summons, and he's able to have physical interaction with them. And one of the things that I'm thinking of is, he's able to have that physical interaction. It's like, okay, so when they get summoned, they're physical beings, at least within the dungeon. But when they're fighting monsters and they defeat them, they become digitized. They become like, they break up in like, you imagine in a VR game, like Sword Art Online or something, like they defeat a monster and it goes, pew, and it doesn't bleed or get injured. It just kind of goes into like polygons. It explodes polygons. So that leads me to believe like, okay, is this dungeon like a digitization? Is it like a VR dungeon or something that they don't completely understand? So question marks there. The other question that was answered is Hikari's? Is that her name? Hikari? Haruka. I was fucking far off. Haruka's dad is apparently still stuck in the dungeon for like the last God knows how many years. Gotta assume he's dead because I don't know how you survive in the dungeon. But apparently we found out that the reason that she has such a disdain for the dungeon is Papa's still stuck in it. So that kind of makes sense on why Kaito's always walking on eggshells. Last thing I'll say when it comes to Haruka is, I think in life we've all had a dense moment or two. Maybe there was a girl or a boy that you liked, but you convinced yourself that they didn't like you. And I can't say that I am not a victim of that mentality too. There's been, looking back, there's been moments to where in my single life to where maybe I didn't take advantage of a moment or something like that was very obvious, but in the moment I was dense as a doorknob. So I get it, but I think that his friends, I think Kaito's friends need to push him in the direction of like, no, this Hikari girl, Haruka, Jesus Christ, this Haruka girl actually likes you. And she did invite him on a date and they shared drinks and she got blushed at when they did, indirectional kisses or whatever they call them. And they shared a whole moment together and she purchased the item that he liked the best. So, all the evidence is there that this was very much a date. All he needs to do is make a tiny move, like to hold hands. Honestly, I think that's enough. I think if he just made the move to hold hands, I think that would clear up confusion for our boy. So anyways, those are my thoughts this episode. Good episode. I'm enjoying this show. I like the anime. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I imagine if you're with me 5 episodes in, that this is your cup of tea. I imagine you're also liking it, or you're a monster. But I'm liking it, so I'm gonna continue watching it each week. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next week, my friends. Have a good weekend. Deuces.